The cold liquid seeps through the knees of my uniform before I register what's happening. It's lukewarm tea, sweet with too much honey, and it pools around the scuffed toes of my rubber shoes while the china cup clatters across the marble floor, spinning to a stop upside down. Charlotte stands over me, her silk robe swishing as she shifts her weight, and her laugh is sharp as broken glass. "Clumsy thing," she says, though I never touched the tray. "You'd think after 2 years you know how to walk without tripping over your own feet." Beside her, Brian doesn't speak. He just stares at the stains spreading across the fabric, then at me, and the look in his eyes isn't disappointment, it's warning. I press my palms flat to the floor to push myself up, and my fingers brush something small and hard tucked under the edge of the sofa leg. Before I can see what it is, Charlotte's foot comes down lightly on my knuckles. "Leave the mess," she says. "Get out of here, and don't come back until you've learned to do something right." The sun slants through the kitchen window an hour later, gilding the edges of the chipped ceramic mug I hold between both hands. I'm 26, and for the last 24 months this house has been the only place I've called home. Not the grand rooms with their velvet curtains and polished antiques. This kitchen, with its scented soaps and the steady hum of the refrigerator, the spot by the back door where I keep my worn paperback collection. I came here after my mother died, with nothing but a suitcase and a head full of half-finished plans. I'd wanted to save enough to go back to school, to study business like she always wanted, to build something that would last. For a while I thought I had it. Charlotte and Brian said they needed someone they could trust, someone who would treat this place like their own. I believed them. I woke before dawn every day, polished every surface until it shone, remembered exactly how they took their coffee, how Charlotte liked her linens folded just so, how Brian hated the sound of the vacuum when he was on calls. I thought I was part of something. It started 3 weeks ago, when the bank called. Charlotte had been pacing the living room for days, checking her phone every 2 minutes, her usual easy smile gone tight and sharp. When she hung up the phone that afternoon, she turned to me like I'd been waiting for her to notice. "The investment account," she said, like she was speaking to a child. "The one I keep my mother's jewelry proceeds in. Over $90,000. It's gone." I froze. I'd never so much as touched a key to their safe, never even seen the passcode to their online banking. "I don't understand," I said. "Why are you telling me this?" Brian stepped forward then, his voice quiet but final. "Because you're the only one who's been here when we're gone, the only one who knows where we keep our papers. And last week we saw you looking at the bank statement on the desk." I remembered that moment, picking it up to clear the table, putting it right back where it belonged. But when I tried to say so, Charlotte cut me off. "You'll pay it back," she said. "Every cent, or we'll call the police and tell them exactly what you did." The days that followed blurred into a cycle of silence and suspicion. They stopped letting me leave the house alone, stopped letting me have friends over, even checked my bag every time I came back from buying groceries. I found out later from the neighbor that they'd been making quiet jokes about me to everyone they knew. How I was always looking at their things, how I must have been jealous of everything they had. Once, when I was clearing the dining room table, I heard Charlotte laugh and say, "She probably thinks this life is something she could ever deserve." Brian didn't argue. He just agreed. What hurt most wasn't the accusation, or the way they treated me like trash. It was that I'd thought they were better than that. I'd thought they saw me as a person, not just someone who cleaned their floors and made their beds. I'd thought for a little while that I mattered. I kept working because I had nowhere else to go, but I started watching more closely. I noticed how Charlotte's hands shook when she opened her laptop, how she deleted emails the second she finished reading them. I noticed Brian stepping out to take calls in the middle of the night, his voice low and urgent, saying things like, "It's only temporary," and "We'll fix it before anyone finds out." Once I overheard them arguing in the hallway. "You should never have touched the joint account," Brian said. "It was supposed to be for emergencies." Charlotte's voice was cold. "It was supposed to make us more money, and if you'd done your research instead of trusting your old friend, we wouldn't be in this mess." I stood perfectly still behind the pantry door, my heart beating fast. They weren't victims. They were hiding something. I started writing everything down. Not on the house computer, not on my phone, on the back of old receipts, in the margins of my books, in a small notebook I kept tucked in the lining of my shoe. Dates, times, what they said, what they did. I learned how to read bank statements by watching them over their shoulders, how to spot the difference between a legitimate transfer and a withdrawal to an unfamiliar name. I remembered the small hard thing I'd found under the sofa the day Charlotte spilled the tea on me. That night I went back to look and found it was a tiny flash drive, the kind people use to store files. I didn't have a laptop of my own, so I waited until they went out for dinner, plugged it into their old desktop in the study, and held my breath. It was full of documents, proof that they'd lost all their money on a bad investment, that they'd emptied the account together, that they'd decided to blame me because I had no family, no lawyer, no one who would believe me. By then, I'd already reached out to a woman named Marlene, who ran a support group for domestic workers who'd been wronged. She was 58, sharp as a tack, and had helped dozens of people get justice when no one else would. When I told her what was happening, she didn't pity me. She just said, "Good, you've got proof. Now we make sure they can't lie their way out of it." She laughed once when I told them how they'd treated me. "They think being cruel makes them powerful," she said, "but it just makes them careless. They'll slip up soon enough. You just have to be ready when they do." If you're rooting for her to get even, hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to see that you don't need violence to win. Charlotte slipped up 2 days later. She came home from the bank furious, throwing her purse onto the counter and yelling that the manager had asked for more proof of identity, that they were asking too many questions. "Tell them the maid stole it," Brian said, and I froze in the doorway. "Tell them you're pressing charges. That'll make them stop asking where the money really went." Charlotte nodded, already pulling out her phone. "I'll call the station first thing tomorrow. By the end of the week, she'll be gone, and we can figure out how to cover the rest." That was when I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I spent the next night going through their files again, copying every document I could find, taking careful notes of every transfer and every conversation. I didn't want to hurt them. I just wanted them to stop hurting me. I wanted them to know what it felt like to be judged without proof, to have your life ripped apart by lies. I wanted them to learn that kindness isn't weakness, that having less money doesn't make you less worthy of respect. The twist came when I found a file tucked away in the very back of the drawer, marked private. It was a letter from Charlotte's mother, written 3 years before she died. "You will always have enough," it said. "But if you ever lose your way, remember that true wealth isn't what you keep for yourself. It's what you give to people who need it most. Be kind to those who work for you. They have hopes and fears and dreams just like you do." I sat back, stunned. Charlotte had grown up hearing exactly what I'd heard from my own mother. She knew better. She'd chosen to be cruel anyway. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. The next morning, I got up as usual. I made their coffee exactly how they liked it, set the table, polished the silver until it shone. When they sat down to eat, Charlotte looked at me like I was already gone. "We've called the police," she said. "They'll be here in an hour. You should pack your things." I nodded slowly and pulled a folded stack of papers from my pocket. "Before you do," I said, "I think you should see these." I laid them on the table, one by one, the bank records, the emails, the letter from her mother, the notes I'd taken of their arguments. I told them exactly what I knew, exactly what I'd found, exactly what would happen if they went through with their lie. "You could have asked for help," I said. "You could have told me you were struggling. But instead, you decided to ruin my life to save your own." Brian went pale. Charlotte stared at the letter from her mother, and for the first time I saw tears fill her eyes, not from guilt, but from the shock of being caught. "How did you find all this?" she whispered. "Because I pay attention," I said. "Because I've spent 2 years learning every little thing about this house, and about you. Because you underestimated me. You thought I was just the maid, but I see everything." I told them I wouldn't press charges, wouldn't tell their friends or their family what they'd done, if they did 2 things. First, they would write a formal letter clearing my name and give me a copy for my own records. Second, they would pay me every dollar they owed me, back pay, overtime, everything they'd refused to give me when they started treating me like a suspect. "And one more thing," I said. You're going to take that money you were going to blame me for losing, and you're going to pay it back. Not to the bank, to the people who trusted you with it. And you're going to do it honestly, without lying to anyone ever again. They tried to argue at first. They said they couldn't afford it, that it would ruin them. But I just looked at them. You were willing to send me to jail to keep what you had, I said. Now you know what it's like to have to choose between your pride and doing the right thing. In the end, they agreed, because they had no other choice. By the time the police arrived an hour later, I was gone. I left the house exactly as I found it, clean, orderly, perfect. I took nothing but my own things, my notebook, and the letter clearing my name. As I walked down the driveway, I didn't look back. I felt lighter than I had in months, like I'd finally taken off a heavy coat I'd been wearing for far too long. A month later, I'm sitting in the front row of a small business class, notebook open on my desk. Marlene helped me find an apartment and got me a new job working for a family who treats me like one of their own. I still clean houses sometimes, but now I set my own hours, negotiate my own pay, and never let anyone make me feel small. I'm saving up to open my own cleaning service one day, one that pays fair wages, that respects its workers, that treats every person like they matter. If you want to see what happens next, subscribe so you don't miss the updates. I ran into Charlotte at the grocery store last week. She was wearing simple clothes, pushing a cart by herself. She looked tired, but calmer than I'd ever seen her. She stopped when she saw me, and for a long moment neither of us said anything. We paid everyone back, she said finally. We sold the house, moved into a smaller place. It's hard, but it's honest. I'm sorry, she added, quiet and sincere. For everything. I nodded. I didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't. But I did say, thank you for saying that. She smiled and walked away. I learned something through all of this. Revenge isn't about making someone hurt the way they hurt you. It's about making sure they can't hurt you anymore. It's about refusing to let someone else decide your worth. For a long time, I thought I was just a maid, just someone who cleaned up other people's messes. But I'm so much more than that. I'm smart, and I'm strong, and I'm capable of building something beautiful. And if someone ever tries to make me feel small again, I'll just remember what I'm made of, and I'll know exactly how to stand my ground. The shift ends, but the stories never do. Every smile hides a struggle, every word a story. Hit subscribe and see the human side of work. Thank you for watching.